How often we have seen this advertisement that FD is bad for you. That doesn't even cover for the inflation. You should diversify your investment. This is not something that is happening at individual level. We have more concerns coming from banking sector, which speaks about falling investments in banks, falling deposits in bank per se. This is just one side of the story. On the other side, especially in post-COVID period, what we see is there has been a systematic fall in interest of foreign institutional investors in Indian stocks. Yet, if you look at the performance of Indian stock market, that is at one of the lifetime highs. Nifty has recently crossed the 25,000 mark and it's still rising. Where this energy, where this momentum, where this support is coming from? This all support is mainly coming from the falling deposits in bank accounts. People are heavily investing in stock markets and its derivatives, including mutual funds, ETFs, and what more. We are living in a times where financial market, the role of financial market in lives of common men is at its peak. It is in this time we are exposed to new types of, what is it, conflict of interest, or as the Congress party accuses, new types of corruption. Let's get fair details. Let's get the facts right on all the allegations set against SBI chief Madhabipuri Butch. The whole story started from the Hindenburg's report, the second report, which accused Butch and her husband of financial misconduct. What exactly they are saying is there has been certain funds in financial havens like Panama Islands or Virgin Islands. These funds were managed by Vinod Adani, who is brother of Gautam Adani, and there has been some concerns regarding these funds being used for money laundering. And what Hindenburg says, Butch and her husband has stake in these funds. This was the first or the core allegations against Butch, which is like released by Hindenburg in these second allegations. And Butch has responded to this in a very strong way. She responded that in a statement as well as in press conference that all the disclosures has been made before as Sebi. And Sebi itself has a strong conflict of interest framework, and she has been operating within this framework. She hasn't violated any XYZ laws. That was the statement by Butch when these allegations was directed towards her by Hindenburg. But the story doesn't end here. A couple of weeks later, we have another set of allegations which was raised by the Congress leader Pawan Khera. He alleged that the Sebi chief of receiving income from ICICI Bank after she took charge of Sebi. Again, getting multiple sources of income, especially when you are engaged with the government, that is again a clear violation of code of conduct of Sebi. Again, there was no response this time from the Sebi chief, while we got a response from ICICI Bank, which clearly dismissed all the allegations against Sebi chief. Now, what else? Things getting more and more worse for her. And this was like the third bullet. That is the protest by Sebi employees. What we see here in August, an anonymous letter titled Grievances of Sebi Officers, a call for respect. So first detailing the grievances of Sebi employees about toxic work culture under Butch's leadership. There has been accusations of minute by minute regulation, micromanaging. There has been allegations of putting unrealistic targets and shifting of goalposts. There has been allegations of normalizing shouting and harassment in very important meetings. A lot of allegations are put against the Sebi chief. First, we have a financial misconduct allegations, which is somewhere close associated with the Adani group. Second, we have some kind of financial conflict of interest regarding ICICI Bank, and there has been further allegations which is leveled by Congress and Z Group and a lot of others, which speaks a very similar language. And there has been allegations of insider trading also, where she has used a personal email account for giving certain informations to some companies, and she have gained around 2.5 crore during her tenure as Sebi chief. So this is again and yet another allegations against Sebi chief. So what exactly to be done in all this context? What we are seeing right now is a lot of mess that is happening. Against a lot of allegations from different sectors is coming, and what exactly is the response? Who regulates the regulator? If regulator is going out of hand, who is there to regulate? The decision has to come from finance ministry, which is the ultimate executive authority here. But so far we are seeing a learned silence from finance ministry. Maybe this will change in next couple of weeks. So what exactly can be done to resolve this issue? What can be the way forward? What is the best thing to happen? Is an independent investigation. We already have Sebi investigation that is going against Adani Group, that is going against a lot of other companies. But due to all these allegations that is been leveled against Sebi, there has been a loss of public trust. We need to gain back the trust, and first thing to gain back public trust or institutional trust, that is, we need an independent investigation which can be undertaken at judicial level, that is Supreme Court can take charge of it, or even it can happen at an executive level if done rightly. Second, there is need for parliamentary scrutiny. You might have already read in the newspapers that Sebi chief may be called by Public Accounts Committee. Public Accounts Committee, which is led by K.C. Venugopal, mostly it is led by the opposition party leaders or opposition party members. So they can have their own XYZ questioning of the Sebi chief. Again, we know Public Accounts Committee, it is not an executive body, it is a parliamentary body with certain limited functions and mostly an advisory body. So Public Accounts Committee, I'm not saying it will make some wonders, but the role of Public Accounts Committee is very important here to regain the lost trust in Sebi in as well as the institutions. Again, there can be an extreme step of voluntary resignation, which can settle the matter for a while. But again, when you suggest in your case studies also, when you suggest voluntary resignation, obviously it will settle the matters for a while. But there are a lot of underlying systemic issues. That is, there are a lot of gaps in Sebi framework, Sebi employee management. Systemic issues remain unresolved if the voluntary resignation option is being put forward. Again, government can intervene, financial ministry can intervene. They can use certain powers under the Sebi Act to put some XYZ regulations on the conduct of the regulator. Internal Sebi reforms, that is the long term, what exactly is needed. We need to take measures so that these kind of issues are not becoming a normal. These kind of issues are not becoming a new normal. These are, if you question comes in examination regarding what next or in a conflict of interest or similar situation, these are different options you can ponder upon. Now, this is what we have spoken so far. This is all language of the newspaper. Going ahead, as a student of ethics, there are a lot of very interesting, and for this mains examination, mains 2024, lot of very important concepts that student of ethics should never miss. The first one is the conflict of interest. What exactly is conflict of interest? Rather than going for fancy definitions, let's understand the concept. Conflict of interest occurs when an individual's personal interest, be it financial, professional, or other, clash with their duties or responsibilities, potentially leading to biased decision making. My personal interest, when it is in conflict with my duties and it lead to a biased decision making, this is exactly what is called as conflict of interest. And it is not something that is limited to financial sector. It can happen at financial, at personal level. My religious beliefs may be, as a religious person, I may be not supporting entry of women in Shabarimala. But as a citizen of the country, I should obey the order of the Supreme Court. As a civil servant, it is not your religious belief that should guide you. It is the laws, it is the XYZ orders from Supreme Court or Constitution that should guide you. Similarly, the conflict of interest can happen at a cultural level, at a professional level, at political level, and a lot more. This is a very broad sector and it's not just limited to this financial misconduct. Now, what are issues with this conflict of interest? What is the problem if there is conflict of interest? 5 major issues is biased decision making. You can take decisions in favor of certain groups. And what is problem with biased decision making? As a civil servant, be a Sebi chief or be a district collector or whatever level, as a civil servant, what should be your primary interest? Your primary interest should be public interest. You should take decisions in the interest of public. You should not even take decision in your own personal interest. You should be taking decisions in public interest. And this will be compromised if you have conflict of interest. You will be taking decision on behalf of certain industries, certain companies, certain other persons, your own personal benefits. Here comes the problem of biased decision making, risk of corruption. Conflict of interest is usually the first step of corruption or last step of hiding a certain corruption. Accountability issues. At the end of the day, who will keep you accountable for your decisions? If you are not making your decisions, if you are not taking ownership of your decisions, then who should be held responsible? How your decisions will be implemented if you are not even ready to accept the ownership of its implementation? Similarly, all this will constitute to inefficiency, and the whole nutshell of all of this is people's losing trust in public institutions. And this is exactly what we are seeing in Sebi. That is, people are losing trust in Sebi's institution or capacity to regulate the financial market. These are 5 major issues associated with conflict of interest. On the other hand, how we should handle conflict of interest. It is virtually impossible to completely avoid conflict of interest. In different walks of life, as a student, as a politician, as an administrator, there will be situations where you will expose to certain conflict of interest. Now, the framework you should keep in your mind is the ACT framework. What does ACT framework speaks about? First step is acknowledge. There can be conflict of interest situations. You need to look for it. You need to identify it. You need to recognize it and admit there is a conflict of interest situation. There is a potential conflict of interest situation. UPSC has previously asked this also. What is different between potential and actual conflict of interest? What is the difference? In potential, the conflict of interest has not resulted in any of the biased decision making or any XYZ things. It's only the timing. In actual, the damage has already been done. So you should identify and look for and recognize there is a situation of conflict of interest. That is the first acknowledge case. In the second, communicate. You can communicate it with higher hierarchy. You can communicate it with, Sebi is there, or RBI is there, like any regulator, or at the ministry level, wherever you have to make the disclosures. If you're a politician, you maybe have to make the disclosures to the people or to Election Commission of India. But it is important for you to communicate whatever is the XYZ case, whatever is the conflict of interest, whatever is your financial or other interest that is already existing. Second step, communicate. Third step, take action. Take action can have 2 levels, especially as an administrator level. At certain levels, you should rescue yourself from decision making. let some others take decision on your behalf. We have seen in case of judges this. If any of the parties, somebody relative or somebody known to the judge, judges rescue themselves from decision making. Similarly, one option is rescue yourself from taking XYZ decisions, but this is not an end in itself. Sometimes if you are taking the decisions, you should ensure transparency. This is how a broad framework on which how you should handle a conflict of interest situation. What you should keep in mind is the ACT framework. A for acknowledge, C for communicate, and T for take certain actions. Now, another interesting concept regarding this is the revolving door concerns. What exactly is the revolving door concerns? What exactly is issue with the Sebi chief? Why she is getting income from, say, ICICI, say XZ group, or say which any XYZ other groups? One major reason is where she is recruited from. Whether it is Sebi or whether it is RBI, whether it is Monetary Policy Committee. Higher levels, where we are recruiting people from? We are recruiting people from somebody who has established themselves in private sector, somebody who is well versed in business in an associated field. You can see the Nandan Nilekani, who was a positive example, who was appointed as the chief of UIDAI, which implements Aadhaar. And where he was earlier working, he was associated with Infosys. Now, what happens when you are inputting people from industry to the regulatory body? People are making a transition from private to public. Now, when you're making this transition from private sector to public, the whole interest, the whole priorities, the whole value system changes. Maybe some people will be like Nandan Nilekani, will be very good at adapting to this. But some people carry their baggage from private sector, their contacts, their ways of making XYZ benefits into this public sector, and they use their position in public sector to get extra benefits. This can also happen vice versa. For example, somebody who is at high level retiring, or you can say resigning from public sector and going to join private sector. So here also again the same concept. He's not just carrying his experience and skill set, he's also carrying contacts which can be misused. And this is whole what is revolving door concerns. Movement of individuals between roles as public officials and private sector employees, often in industries they previously regulated. It raises concern about conflict of interest and regulatory capture, which take us to the next term, that is regulatory capture. What exactly is regulatory capture? Now, suppose we have recruited people from industry, from say some banks, from say mutual funds, from XYZ other financial institution, investment banks, all these kind of groups we have assembled people and put in Sebi. And what is the responsibility of Sebi? To regulate the same industry. So what happens is these people will collude, and we reach a situation where the regulator is not representing the interest of the public. Rather, the regulator is representing the interest of the industry which they are regulating. And this exact situation is called as regulatory capture. It happens when the regulatory agencies are dominated or influenced by industries they are supposed to regulate. For example, it happens in different sectors. Like if doctors are getting allocated or recruited into this IMA or doctors regulatory bodies, the same thing can happen. When somebody who has to be regulated, he is being recruited as a regulator, then we will end up as an institutional state called as regulatory capture, leading to decisions that benefit the industry rather than public. The problem is the decision making will be biased towards certain industries, certain groups in this industry, and it will not be in the interest of general public. So these are some of the very interesting terms which has huge chance of coming in mains 2024, as well as very much of interest for a student of ethics in all the developments that is happening related to the allegations against Sebi chief. Now, what exactly will happen to the Sebi chief, Madhabi Butch, whether she will resign or whether she will be removed, or nothing will happen as normal, things will settle down as normal. That is something it is yet to be seen. Right now, we will wind up on this note. All the best.